So
Yep.
Thank you.
Actually, a lot of us will be speaking. I'm just gonna give cues. All right. So, hi everybody. Let's get started. We're 1 minute in. Thank you for joining, everybody. So we're first gonna, well, let me just go over, what our plan is for today. So the goal is to do an overview of the meeting that we conducted, or the sets of meetings that we conducted this week. So we had the first quarterly meeting, which was roughly about 12 hours of EC time that we spent in one-on-one meetings, in small group brainstorms and discussion sessions with others from the community also. And then we had a 3-hour workshop on team cohesion with Geraldine Fitzpatrick. And all of this was to get EC members slightly more acquainted with one another and to start brainstorming and discussing topics that they're looking into and that are also critical, hopefully, to the well-being of our community. And for each of these sessions, what we'll do is just do a brief recap of what we discussed, what the next steps are, whatever notes we have to report, and then in the end, whatever time we have, we'll leave that up to Q&A. And if we need to end early, we can end early. So let's see. So the first set of things that we want to talk about are are everything that comes under local global. So looking at our regional committees and then also discussing notes from the brainstorming session that we had. So first, is Luigi here? No, not yet, I guess. So why don't we hear from Naomi first, and then if Luigi's in here, I can talk about his bit as well, because it is close to midnight, I guess, closing to midnight in Italy. So Naomi, do you want to go?
Okay. Okay, so okay, hello, I'm Naomi, VP at large. I'd like to briefly give an update on the efforts around community building in Asia. So over the past years, the Asian Development Committee, so ADC, led by Yoshifumi Kitamura, has successfully activated HCI research and practices in Asia, well, evidenced by increased number of Sekai members from Asia and more Sekai events and conferences held in Asia. From discussions with the ADC members and NEHA and some key players inside and outside the EC, we came to the conclusion that the ACI community in Asia is ready to move to the next stage. Which was from the development stage to the evolution stage, where we want to focus more on building bridges to strengthen the Asian HCI community rather than cultivating new ones. So with appreciation, we are closing the ADC and forming a new steering committee. The steering committee will be in charge of identifying common issues and interests across Asian countries, create places for shared learning and provide support wherever possible, coordinate with chapters to gain synergy with chapter activities, and also identify countries with no chapters and getting key players involved. Also engage with activities to showcase Asian HCI research in cooperation with other regional committees around the world, such as SLAC. So we will be calling for volunteers who'd be keen to participating in this role. We are planning to make this open within a week or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Thanks for that update. And let's move on to the next item, which is, I think, the Medkai. So Luigi's not here. I can share the update from his end. So let me see if I can share the screen. So there's a survey that we put out. If you can see my screen, that's for the Mediterranean Sekai Committee. And this is basically HCI researchers in European countries in the Mediterranean area. They've, many of them are coming together to foster a stronger connection among HCI researchers in the region to facilitate the exchange of ideas, experiences, initiatives, to learn from each other, help grow and connect local chapters and communities, increase representation of voices from local chapters and communities in Sekai events, and then oversee funds that are given to the region for Sekai development. So this is a survey that has gone out to our representatives in many of these countries. And I'm going to drop a link here just in case any of you would like to share it out. We have about 50 to 60 responses, I think, at this point, and we'll be closing it soon. But the goal is really to, I'll stop sharing now, to put together an effort which is similar to what we've seen in the Latin America context and build community there. So this is along the lines of what Naomi talked about. The Asia Development Committee is the first such effort that we had put together, I think 6 or 7 years ago in Asia. So that's the update on the MedCai effort. And why don't we move on to the next item, Adriana, which is you. So talking about the brainstorming session on the local and global.
Sure. So for the brainstorming session and on local and global that we held, we had Naomi, Neha, Nick, Priya, Zulema, and Luigi were present. And we discussed a little bit, questions. It was mostly like discussion, open discussion, brainstorming. So we reflected on definitions for local and global and where and how they intersect and how they could or should interact, and how do we find synergies to grow HCI and Sekai's presence also in different locations. One of the elements we talked about is that local, of course, geography is the obvious one, like what defines a local group. But also there are proximity in cultures and practices and language. So that may also define communities. And these communities often have different sizes and different needs. And these should be taken into account. But they also may have may face similar challenges. So there's another spot where we can bring people together and bridge. As for structures, we have chapters and now the regional committees. Those are unevenly spread though. So there's some locations that have multiple chapters. Some locations have very few, don't even have a large enough community to sustain a chapter. And we looked at chapters as conduits maybe to local communities. So we can, like, through these chapters, we can piggyback off them to take the community pulse, to do surveys, to speak to the community and to get in touch with them and to listen to them as well. And the regional committees can help bridge across communities and help grow and see the smaller communities where, the chapters, there's not enough representation that we can get a chapter going yet. So maybe we can help use our regional committees to help these communities grow into, larger communities. In general, what we figured is that we need people in the community. So we need people on the ground, like who are local, and ways to work with them. And we also reflected that there may be other structures that are already in place that we should look into and work with, such as, local groups and societies, existing conferences. So they may not be Sekai conferences. Maybe they're not ACM conferences. They're just regional or local, but there are people organizing. So we should maybe connect to those to help sort of bridge these distances and work with them. So we figured that we should try and look, and as a goal, try to help HCI grow in different regions, because many groups are quite small, and increase connections and knowledge exchange across different groups, and increase visibility of work done outside the main, let's say, Sekai venues. And also one thing that came out of it that was more objective is that the language on our website maybe doesn't help people understand what Sekai does, what it is, and how it works. So, and that there's very little mention of community. So maybe that's sort of a starting point that we can start working on as a more immediate goal. Let's work on improving the website a little bit. And I think I'll stop here. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Adriana. Thank you to everybody who attended. Also, Zulema, thank you for taking all the notes for the session. And we'll move on. So I didn't have local and global first on my list, but I did put them on because we had some people who had time constraints. Next, we're talking about conferences. So Kale, could you share maybe an update from your analysis of the survey? This is also the Kai 22 survey, but talking about transitioning from virtual to hybrid and in-person conferences, and also then share information, I guess, about your upcoming session on that.
Yeah, happy to. So for the survey analysis, and we can get a little bit more deeper into that for those who want to attend the hybrid meeting, which will be next week. I did a sort of deeper dive on the group that said that they were likely to attend the in-person portion. I could have spent a lot of time going through all of it. However, this seemed like it would give us the best sense of who wanted to be there physically and under what conditions. And it was that sort of like qualifying what conditions that I think we can learn a lot from. So 52.37% roughly said, actually, Neha, do you mind, do we want to share this or no?
Oh, I can share it.
Okay.
I do have it up, so
I'll keep going through it while you.
I keep going. Yeah, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, so 52.37% of the survey respondents said that they were more likely to attend an in-person component. About 7% or 7 in total, so 0.01% made no indication or preference as to venue. And luckily, only about 3 or 0.62% denied COVID was worth worrying about or a matter of fact for them at all. So that's actually a great sign in terms of our, attendees being evidence-based in their practices. We have, as you can see here on some of the charts, distancing, how important masks are, vaccination proof and on-site testing. And this is where I think we see lower numbers than that sort of 52% of likely to attend in person. For example, we've got 95.47% looking at how important masks are. I wanted to look a little bit deeper and see how many people would only feel comfortable attending in person out of those who said that they would prefer to be there in person with combined sort of COVID precautions. And we can see that 9% roughly said that it was very important for the total combination of distancing, masking, vaccination proof, and on-site testing. So all measures. If we lack those 4 measures, it's therefore somewhat likely that we'd see, 10% of those even attending dropping off. Very important for distance and mask was about 46%. And 4.31% out of just this group said that they wanted in-person due to previous online experiences being poorly done. And so these are some of the lowest numbers, right? I didn't count, say, barely important in that or slightly important. This was just the very important to me. And in the case of these being bad online experiences deterring them from, preferring a virtual option, that 4.31%, that's just out of those who wrote something in the sort of open fields about that. And so I think that that's a little bit higher, right? If we yeah, without taking up a whole lot more time, I think it's also important to qualify these results of, even though like some strong number less than 52.37% would feel comfortable, given that we may have issues securing on-site testing and vaccination proof for this. It's also important to like bring in aspects of budget, which Andrew would be able to speak to at another time or during the hybrid meeting later on next week. But yeah, it is a complicated case, and I don't think it's as clear cut as maybe we had previously discussed in this meeting with Cliff. But without going on and on and on, Neha, was there anything else about the survey that you wanted me to point out?
Nothing except that we will be putting this up as a blog post. And that will kind of summarize the implications of these numbers, not just for Kai 22, but for other conferences as well. So this is just to kind of give a teaser to this analysis that we did. And then the other thing I wanted to quickly share, I guess, is that the SIG governing board is meeting in January to discuss conferences after COVID. And so they want to do a survey across the SIGs to figure out what our conferences should look like post-COVID. And we don't have currently data beyond what Kale just discussed, but this might be something that we look into to see what are the things that people would like to see in conferences post-COVID. So that's just something to mention in terms of a discussion and a conversation that is happening across the SIGs. Okay, so I think with that, we can move on to the next item, which is—
actually, sorry, just before that, we'll be having these sort of hybrid conferences meeting on Tuesday, the 23rd at 3 p.m. Universal time. I will send out an email to everyone on the board here about that.
Yeah, thank you. And I also dropped that link in the, or not the link, but the time in the chat. Okay, so Simone, do you want to give an update on the knowledge sharing session that you had?
Yes, sure. Yeah, so thank you. And yeah, we had last week a brainstorming session regarding knowledge sharing. It was Luigi and Mike. And I would like also thank you to Mike and Luigi because of this great brainstorming and discussions. And here the brainstorming session was split in two parts. The first part was that we discuss which experience we already have regarding knowledge sharing. Maybe a short background. Knowledge sharing is here to identify what kind of information we as Sekai can offer to the organization shares in an area of meta level, and how we can help them. And at the moment, I collect all information, and also I plan a survey to find out or to get more information in order to find out how we can help them, and to conduct first and requirement analysis to see which ways is a good way for support. So therefore, the first part of this brainstorming session was to identify which experience they already have. And here, for example, we identified that this whole over works very well. So some conferences like HighPlay offer and rollover. So this means that a senior, for example, in my case, I was work in progress chair at HighPlay, and I rolled over in the next year, so that always is a senior chair who can share and help, for example, the junior chair. Also, one challenge was identified is that the conference happened at different times per year, so it can be a challenge to get the right information at the right time. And also sharing the information can be challenging in regarding that everyone knows to find this information, where they can find this information. Maybe also a checklist can be very helpful, and also maybe an overview of tools and providers, and share experiences and best practices, for example, can be very helpful. Also, we discuss how we can exchange this information. On the one hand, for example, on the website, but also maybe other communication channels like mailing list or Discord or Slack, or makes this a sense, for example. Also, we discuss a little bit regarding that maybe it's also nice, but maybe I think this is maybe future work, to share also knowledge between the different communities, so between the Sekai communities, because Sekai also have different communities, and here also knowledge sharing would be very helpful, that we know which each community do, and maybe also best practices from each community. And yeah, the second part was then to identify already interesting questions which can be interesting for this survey. For example, the demographics, like the chair position, would be interesting, because I think if you're a social media chair or paper chair or accessibility chair, you have other needs as, for example, another chair, for example. Therefore, in the survey, we would like to make the difference which kind of chair position, also regarding the experience of the chair position. A question would be which kind of methods they prefer regarding sharing information. And also relevant questions is also what type of information the different conferences would like to share with others. So these are some examples for the survey, what we discussed.
Okay, thank you. And I guess for those of us interested, this is really about ensuring knowledge transfer across conferences and across events. And yeah, again, mention of the website came up, and I also shared a link to the chapter Slack. Any questions or any discussion that we want to have on either of these issues with regards to conferences? Okay, so then let's move on. I think the next section is probably going to take the most time. So under community, we have Sekai turns 40. So Susan, if you'd like to say a little bit about what this is about, and we'll share the crowdsourced document as well. So go ahead.
Great. Well, I'm really excited because we have a 40th birthday coming up. And some of you are way younger than that, but Sekai is turning 40 next year. And so we are trying to get lots of ideas as to how we could celebrate it in a way that will be more than just a birthday cake. We want to do things that are more of lasting value. And that seems to be the feeling in the community, not just my ideas, but other ideas. So we sent out a note to the membership with the link to the document that Neha just put in the chat. And we have at the moment, we have 4 pages of single-spaced ideas. They range from little things like cake to big things like redesigning the website, and other things like updating the Wikipedia entry for Sekai, which it's hopelessly out of date, as an example. A talent show, I think that one personally has a lot of merit, etc. Please take a look, and please, if you haven't already, add your name and email address, and also add your ideas. Everybody can add ideas. I think that EC is already captured in the email addresses, but please, those of you who are not on the EC who are visiting, who are members, we'd love to have your ideas. And we want to have a mix of honoring the past and visioning for the future. And a number of people have mentioned this. So one of the things we're talking about is to propose a SIG for Kai that will focus on the next 40 years. You know, what should Sekai be? Specifically Sekai, not just the profession, but what kinds of things should a professional organization like us do in the future? And so I'm putting together a very rough draft of that, which is just for people to take swipes at and to modify. And I'm just doing it because I have some time and nobody else has any time, right? I know you all, you don't have any time. At the same time, Olivier Sincere is putting together a SIG on HCI history and Sekai history, sorry. And so we think that these two will dovetail very nicely into, you know, the past and the future. So I am personally very excited about that particular piece, and it's got a deadline, so it's kind of top of the list.
Yeah, and I like that a lot of the ideas have to do with getting chapters to participate and getting people from different, subfields within HCI to participate, and different formats for hearing from people across the community.
Yes. And also with an understanding of the importance of diversity. So we embrace a future that's far more diverse than our past. And I think that's really important.
So I don't know how we're going to do 4 pages of ideas. I don't think we're going to be able to do all of these, but
No.
we will try to see how much of this we can accommodate, and also try to focus on ideas that will live beyond the 40th year. So that
Exactly.
aren't just about, I mean, cake would be nice, but aside from that, just other things. So yeah, thank you. And
For those of you
thanks,
who are
Josh.
young, cake might, for those of you who are young, cake might last for 40 years. It won't last for 40 years for me, I can tell you that much.
Okay, so thank you, Susan, and thank you for taking the lead on this.
Sure.
It's really great, and we're really fortunate to have someone who has actually seen these decades across Sekai to really have a great perspective on this. So, and I know it's like we'll be hearing from you next time as well about partnerships, which is something completely different. But thank you for sharing this.
They dovetail very nicely, I think.
Yeah, I can see, because a lot of people have actually shared their ideas here, right? So it would be good to see how we can build partnerships out of this as well. Any other thoughts that anyone wants to add here?
I had a minor curiosity-driven question. Since my Sekai life hadn't really started 10 years ago, does anyone know what the 30th birthday was like? Was there something?
There was some comments about that actually, right? Like someone did say that on the 30th birthday, I think, was it Shion who had shared a comment?
Or Stephen's, was it Stephen Pemberton?
On the doc, you mean? Yeah, on the Google Doc? Okay,
yeah.
I'll have a look.
Yeah. No, sorry, he's pointing us to the 50th anniversary of ACM and some of the things that he did then. You know, he was the original believe it was the original editor of Interactions. So he's also got a lot of us old farts are here, but what I love is that it's not just old farts, if you know what I mean. I think it's very old fart, by the way, that is a technical term. It's a registered technical term. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thanks for that. I was trying to find that comment I had seen about, I think someone had tried to do a paper on the 30 years of Sekai, or maybe it was the 30 years of Kai, I'm not sure. But I can't find it now. Anyway, so yes, please, anyone who hasn't added their name on here, please go ahead and do that. Yeah, there's a photo of a poster at the bottom. I think that has to do with what the Kai proceedings used to look like. And I don't know what we would do now. I suppose is take the logos from the last several years. But yeah, this is really cool. Okay, so next up we have awards. And Josh, I was thinking that we could just quickly summarize where we're at with the data that we collected, because the last time in our meeting, we also talked about awards, but at that point we were trying to collect data. And now we have the data and we've analyzed it, and we have some changes that we want to introduce, but we haven't published this yet. So do you think we could just take a couple of minutes to just summarize what the EC will do on
Sure,
awards?
sounds good.
I'll
So,
share
hey
the.
everyone. Okay, so thanks for putting me on the spot. And hey everyone, my name is Josh Andres. I'm the AC for awards. And I'm going to start high level with some of things we're doing, and then we can jump into those specific points for the blog post. So this document that you're seeing is the blog post. It's coming soon, and it summarizes all the findings from the awards survey that was taken in October. It will introduce a few improvements to the awards process and experience. And we are doing this together with the subcommittee chairs to ensure our synergies in all touch points of the awards experience. One important announcement that I would like to make here for all of you is that the awards nominations have been extended to January 21st, and that will give us a bit more time to apply all the improvements. So please nominate someone today. And now let's move to the blog post, and I'm going to briefly tell you about these changes. So this was a survey. There were 72 responses. A couple of people from the EC reviewed them first to derive themes, and then we presented these themes to the rest of the EC members, and we got their input. And as you know, in the EC, we have a range of members with different experiences in terms of their engagement, their area of expertise. And with this, we improve and refine the theme. So the very first one was around being open and transparent. And the biggest pain point here is that nominators didn't have any feedback on their failed or successful nominations. And this makes it difficult to know why it didn't succeed or how you could improve future nominations. To improve this pain point, we are going to work together with the subcommittee chairs to include feedback, and that, of course, that will help to make it more transparent, and it will help people to improve their nominations in the future. There were a few points as well about knowing more about the awards. So for example, what is the criteria to judge the awards? And also, what are the rewards that come with awards? So for example, traveling to Kai, and of course, getting free registration and getting hotel accommodation, and of course, the honoraria, but that of course is also per award. In theme 2, one important point that we found is that there is a need to recognize more of the community. The community is growing rapidly, and most of the awards focus at early career and then at the later part of the career. So there is this big gap in the middle to recognize more of let's say, medium career, and also other areas such as outstanding educator, which a lot of people in the community do. So this is a really important aspect to recognize. And looking at some of the other SIGs, they have established these awards recently, and we think this would be very fitting for our community as well. And last one, just very briefly, because you will have this blog to read everything in detail and reach out to ask any questions and to give any feedback. So theme 3 is about rethinking how, when, and where to honor awardees. Traditionally, we've had the awards banquet as the place where we celebrate them and we announce the awards. However, we think that the awards is a really important opportunity to get in person with others, and we can also decouple the celebration to be more open to the rest of the community. So the awards can be an exclusive experience for those awardees to get to know some of the other people, but the celebration of the awards and the work should be more open. And this is one of the things that we're thinking to experiment with next year, because we also have the Sekai turns 40 anniversary. And one of the things we're going to do there is to do more with awards that do not offer awardees the opportunity to present at Kai. So for example, with the Kai Academy and with lifetime surveys, they don't usually have a presentation at Kai. However, we think it's important to offer a format in which the community can engage with these people. So for example, a panel or interviews to learn about their stories, learn about some of the things that have shaped their work, and be able to do this to knowledge transfer and to learn about the person as well. To wrap up, there is also something that we're going to do with the Special Recognition Award. Well, the goal is that we want to introduce more awards, as I mentioned before, to celebrate more of the community. And we see the Special Recognition Award as an opportunity to do more with that. So I leave it at that. There will be more details on the blog post in the next couple of weeks. It will be posted on the mailing list and in social media. So please tune in. Back to you, Neha.
Thank you, Josh. And again, if you want to nominate people, then the site to go to, and this is for most of our programs where you apply, it's sekai.submittable.com, and you can see links to everything there. And the blog post we're going to put out once we've gotten feedback and we've finalized the text. Also with the subcommittee chairs from the awards committees, we'll put that in. And at the same time, we're also thinking about what we can do at the ACM level. So thinking about representation at the ACM level for members of the Sekai community. So that's on awards. Next, we have community support, but I think Luigi is not here. Adriana, do you want to say a little bit about community support, just the discussion that we had the other day? A quick summary. It wasn't too much, just mostly I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
I didn't know that well, and it is late for Luigi, but let me just quickly mention that the sekai.submittable.com that I shared that link, that basically has most of our community support programs. And we've just been trying to figure out how things are going to change from, you know, when we think about in-person events, some more. So far, it's been possible for us to fund everything in terms of community projects and travel awards that people have asked for. But at some point, we're going to have to start incorporating support for physical travel as well. And so that's something that we've been prepping for, to see how we do that. And then, yeah, so I already have a link to Submittable. site. With regards to volunteering, I don't know if Priya, you have any. Priya is here, right? Or no?
I'm here.
Is there anything? Hi. Do you want to just summarize what you all discussed in the in your session on volunteering?
Sure. So I had the volunteer committees conversation yesterday. I'm still drafting up the notes from that. And then the broader people pipelines conversation is happening on Thursday. Very, very generally, when it comes to volunteer committees, so the goal of this conversation, it was me, Helena, and Kale who joined. And I know there's interest among the EC to create committees to help people with their work. Stacy did this with the Accessibility Committee, and I know several other EC members are interested or sort of actively creating committees. And so we were just, this was sort of an open-ended conversation just to exchange thoughts about this, how we go about doing this. I know for me personally, the two biggest things that I think are important to consider as we do this is intentionality and process. So intentionality being, what's the purpose of these groups? We even talked about sort of the difference between a committee, which officially speaking becomes sort of like an official part of the EC that outlasts the current people on the EC in the way that the Accessibility Committee is, versus something more like a task force, which is more so a group of people who are sort of working on a task or working to support the person who's in that particular role, but that group might not be so formalized so as to outlast the person in the particular role. So that's just sort of one, that becomes more of an administrative difference, but I think also just broadly thinking, what are the purpose of these committees? What do people want them for? What do we want them to be doing? Going back to some of the conversations that we, the EC, have had around team building, sort of also being able to think about less in terms of kind of who do you want on the committee, and more so shifting towards what is the task for these group of people? What are the tasks? What are the skills? Are there people who have skills that can help you maybe balance out your weaknesses in this role? But very much thinking about kind of the purpose, the kinds of things you want this group of people to do. So that's like in the intentionality piece of it. And then there's the process piece of it. So how should people be assembling these committees? I mean, we have the open call for volunteers, and I think Matt with the VP, with the committee for chapters is kind of going through that. And also, thinking about the steps that have to go into the process of creating this. Helena shared that sort of she has some templates and some thoughts around sort of the process that went into creating the Accessibility Committee. Again, that was a very detailed process that involved several EC votes, but I think that's also in part because that committee is now kind of a formal part of the broader EC structure rather than a more kind of advisory group, shall we say. And then of course, making sure that we are being inclusive in these calls, so it becomes less of sort of, I want these people on my committee, and more so, again, going back to the what do you want, what skills and tasks are you looking for, putting out those open calls, finding the right people, making sure that they understand what the task is, what the job is, how long it is this, what is the term, things like that. So basically a lot of kind of spelling out what it is these groups are supposed to be doing and what processes we're using to create those groups. I am interested to hear if others have thought, if you like these kind of being the guiding ideas for creating committees, if you have other thoughts. But that's kind of the general arc of the conversation, but still very much in information gathering mode. So I'd love to hear from other people if you have thoughts.
Thank you, Priya. Yeah, and if anyone has anything to share, please, you can raise your hand or you can put stuff in chat. I wanted to mention that for the community support work that we did have an advisory group. I don't think that, I don't know if that exists still for community support, but I do know that this is something that had come to mind, that we don't really have a place on the website where we acknowledge advisory group members or just advisors in general. And I wonder if that's something to think about as well, like how we acknowledge people who may not be committees. And then there are some committees that no longer exist that are still on our website. So I guess, yeah, I mean, I think that's also just a larger thing for us to tackle is updating the website, making sure that it's reflecting all the changes that the org has been going through. Some of it might be for you to look at maybe on the committee's page, Priya.
I agree. All of that. Yeah, I think it's important to have the website updated. I also agree that it's important to recognize people who might be in serving in more advisory functions.
Anything else that anyone wants to add? No? Okay. So next up, I guess we're talking about community helplines. And if you want to just share your updates on the equity talks, Kale.
Yeah, so we are just waiting final approval from some of the people that were quoted in the ET10 race and Sekai summary. Once that's done, we will have completed all 10 talks and the circle will be closed and we can keep moving forward. That'll be fantastic. We will also be releasing a survey gauging Sekai members' interests, feedback on the equity talks, what sort of special foci might be missed, and all of that good stuff. I think that's about it though.
Yeah, this is a survey, and I think it's basically just like which equity talks did you attend, what did you like, what would you wish was different, any other feedback or reflections you'd like to share, especially if you'd like us to be looking into recommendations for the future. So with regards to topics or format or any such. So we will put that out on the mailing list soon. Here we do have links to all of them, but we haven't confirmed that everyone is okay with all of the representation in the last write-up. So once we do that, we'll share it out. So with that, I'll stop sharing. And then the final item that I wanted to mention under community helplines was that we will be having a meeting with CARES and with the ethics committee to discuss various things, to discuss CARES outreach, to discuss what happens when someone needs support, whether they should go to the ethics committee meeting or, I mean, to the ethics committee or to CARES. And I know that Michael is here. Michael, I don't want to put you in the spot, but I just wanted to ask if you want to say something from the CARES perspective about our upcoming conversation with regards to the violations database, maybe.
Oh my goodness, thank you. I hadn't prepared anything.
You don't have to.
I
Just a
think I'm
quick
going to be
update.
craven and dodge this. There will be a discussion of the violations database. We in CARES don't know very much, so we will be collecting questions rather than answering them. We'd love to know enough to answer the questions, but no, we don't know that yet. So come, please, brainstorm.
Yeah, that's exactly. I just wanted to mention we don't have a date yet, but we will soon. And it's very much to just talk, sense making around the database and then just thinking about the future and whatever feedback we have, we can maybe pass that on to the ACM. But that's something that is in the works for now.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. I just didn't want to speak for you because you were here, so I thought I'd rather ask you.
You're very
first.
kind. I appreciate it. Thanks.
And then finally, just a word on comms. So we were going to have a meeting that Tammy is going to be leading as VP Communications to discuss how we go about our comms approach. So what are things that we should maybe do differently in line with other EC values with regards to local global, or with regards to changes and updates to the website. So that's probably going to be something we hope to talk about in the December meeting. And on the accessibility front, I know that we have a session that we were going to be scheduling. So that also we'll be talking about in December. I don't know, Zulema, did you want to say anything more about that?
This is Zulema speaking about the meeting on December.
The group conversation that we were gonna have.
Where I'm not aware of the future because
Okay.
Stacy has confirmed that she is coming and
Okay.
retaking the activity in December. So the debriefing that she gave me and Mike as co-chairs was covering until November. So I'm sorry, I don't know anything about that.
Okay, that's great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for participating in all of these sessions. And we will look forward to Stacy telling us about this. Okay, so that's all we had on the agenda for today. I think those are all the meetings, but have I missed anything? Anything that anyone else wants to add? Okay, Susan.
I just wanted to mention that in addition to the Sekai turns 40, yay, I'm also heading up an effort to build partnerships. And there is also partnerships. We're looking for ideas of people, organizations, where we might have a link. And there's also a document on that, which at the moment, I believe is just for the EC, but at some point we will be opening that up as well. So watch for that.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you for that. Anything else? We have a few minutes for Q&A if anyone has any questions. If not, then we can close the meeting early. Josh, are you saying
That's all.
something?
I just wanted to say hi to Michael. That's all.
Yes, everyone's allowed to say hi to everybody. This can be our hallway conversation time.
I am so happy to see so many people in this meeting.
We're happy to see you. Thanks for stopping by, Michael. Anyone else want to say hi?
Hi, Michael, and everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm really glad also to see so many folks who, in addition to the EC, and I'm also really excited about this EC and the diversity that we represent. I think it's wonderful. So, jazz hands.
Thank you. So thanks, everybody. I guess we can end the meeting now and see you all